Well, this was long, even with me speaking as quickly as I could, but I thought I'd try it as one long video instead of breaking it up into parts. Let me know if you think it would have been better for me to make this into multiple parts, or if one long one is good. This is The Devil's Guide to D&D. Devil's Delegate here, and today it's time to rank the rogue subclasses. Now, recently I did a video talking about the strengths and weaknesses of the rogue and how I like to build them. So take a look at that if you'd like to have some context on how I'm ranking these. Now, what I'd like from a rogue subclass is one that helps in the amount of damage that the rogue is able to deliver. And also like a lot of help for defense. Rogues are weak in that area. And it's surprising how many of the subclasses don't deliver on the first, and how a majority don't deliver on the second. Additionally, as the rogue is a skill monkey, I'd like some mechanically interesting additions to its skill use. Within each subclass, I'm going to rank the features as good or great, features that are effective, integrate well with the base class, and are fun to play. Or fair, ones that are better to have than not to have, but aren't a draw for the subclass. Or poor, ones that don't do what's needed or don't do it well enough, don't add sufficiently to the base class, or actually make it worse. And ones that aren't designed well. I'll also mark some features as situational, means they might be very good in the right situation. However, that means you only really want to be taking classes with a lot of situational features if you know the situation you're going to be getting into. When you don't know, chances are these features will be poor. When ranking the subclass features, there's some base class features that you should keep in mind. The ones that make the rogue a playable class. I'm thinking of cunning action, where you use a bonus action to dash, disengage, or hide. And the 5th level, uncanny dodge, which lets you use a reaction to halve the amount of damage that you take. Any subclass feature which interferes with either of these features is going to be a weaker feature. Additionally, there's 2 other base class features that you should keep in mind. One is steady aim, which allows you to use a bonus action in order to get advantage on your next attack. The other is reliable talent, one of the stars of the rogue's class. And that's an 11th level feature that makes it so that for proficient ability checks, you can never roll below a 10. These 2 features will play a large part in how I rate the subclass feature. So here we go. In 10th place, that's last place, and deservedly so, is the Inquisitive. This is supposed to be a detective, your Sherlock Holmes. And why didn't they use the name detective for the subclass? Of course, Inquisitive is actually a lot more fitting because Inquisitive is a terrible name, and this is a terrible subclass. It doesn't actually do what it claims to do. You're not going to become a great investigator using this subclass. In fact, it can't even work out the fact that this should be an intelligence-based subclass, often wanting to point you toward wisdom. But okay, what do you get or not get? At 3rd level, you get 3 features, 2 of which are so insignificant that I really ought to count them as just ribbon features, but since the 3rd isn't any good either, I'm not going to give these first 2 a pass. So let's start off with Ear for Deceit. With this, whenever you make a Wisdom Insight check, rolls of 7 or lower are treated as an 8. And I pretty much hate everything about this feature. So we're only talking about a tiny use of insight. This is going to show up so seldomly that it's hardly worth considering. For a start, why an 8? This is inconsistent with other similar features where rolls of a 9 or less are made a 10. Why are we having an 8? Also, why Wisdom? A more thematically appropriate feature might have been to make it so that the Inquisitive would use his intelligence for insight checks. In any case, this trivial feature is completely wiped out by the 11th level reliable talent. Now, a lot of features we're going to run into are going to end up being insignificant once reliable talent comes along, but in this case, no, this feature is actually eradicated by it. It no longer exists. That's just bad design. Then there's Eye for Detail, where you can get to use now a bonus action instead of a regular action for wisdom perception checks to spot hidden creatures or objects, or investigation checks to uncover or decipher clues. Have you ever made investigation checks to uncover or decipher clues in the middle of combat? Because if it's not in the middle of combat, it doesn't matter if it's a bonus action. The second part of this will never come up. Because remember, this isn't just making investigation checks, it's making investigation checks to uncover or decipher clues. As for the first part of it, there might be some time when you want to find a hidden creature in combat, although more often you want to do that before combat, in which case it doesn't matter that it's a bonus action. But the big feature of this subclass is insightful fighting. This gives you a new way of getting your sneak attack, that you use a bonus action to make a insight check against your opponent's deception, and if you succeed, then you can sneak attack against it. Okay, so first off, we've got a feature which is giving you something that you've already got. That is the ability to sneak attack. You have multiple ways of sneak attacking. Just having one of your allies standing next to the person makes this feature pointless. So already we're thinning out the number of times when this could pop up. In those few cases where it is important, you don't even get sneak attack due to this. Rather, it's a contest that you might fail, which means you're going to want to invest in wisdom and probably put expertise in insight. Not something you normally want to do. And even then, it might not work. But far worse, this requires a bonus action. Remember, you have things to do with your bonus action. This is, for instance, eliminating your opportunity to take a cunning action. Further dropping this down, we'll find later subclasses with features that do something similar, far better, and with less cost. So this feature was no good before Tasha, but after Tasha's, it's really garbage. We now have steady aim, which, like this, uses a bonus action, and it gives the same result, which is allowing us to have our sneak attack. But steady aim works automatically. There's no check. What's more, steady aim doesn't just allow you to make your sneak attack, it's giving you advantage. That's a big deal that this is not doing. So for a ranged rogue, there is never a time when this is a good idea. Someone might say, but when you use insightful fighting, it continues to work for a minute. Yeah, that would be a minute if you're not going to switch targets. See, as soon as you switch targets, you have to do this again. So it's using up your bonus action again. And if you're not switching targets, that means you're probably in a boss fight, which means you're gonna have allies around that creature fighting it, meaning this is pointless. At 9th level, you gain Steady Eye, giving you advantage on perception and investigation checks when you're not moving more than half your speed. I like advantage on checks. Perception and investigation, both good checks to have them on, so this is okay, except it's 9th level, and at 11th level, we get reliable talent, at which point this becomes trivial. If we'd gotten this at 3rd level, it'd be decent. At 13th, we get Unerring Eye, and what the hell is this? As an action, you get to sense the presence of illusions, shape changers, and other magics designed to deceive the senses within 30 feet of you, if you're not blinded or deafened. But you gain no information about it. You only know it's there. You don't know where it is. It doesn't actually help you find it, attack it, do anything about it. You just get the feeling that something here is trying to trick you somewhere. And you can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, which probably isn't going to be that high, but 3, 4, possibly 5 times a day you can do this. And it's only within 30 feet. So you might have to use this multiple times in a single room. And since this is a restricted feature, you have to already suspect that there's something there before you'd even use this. So if you're suspicious of an illusion, you're already going to go check out the illusion. All this skill gives you is, yeah, you should probably indeed go check out what you were going to already. As the lone 13th level feature, this is nothing. Finally, we have Eye for Weakness, which allows you to give some extra damage to anyone you've got under your Insightful Fighting feature. This should have been part of Insightful Fighting to start with. This should have been tacked onto it at 3rd level to make Insightful Fighting have some value. But waiting to make your 3rd level feature anything at 17th level, that's way too long to wait. I really like the idea of a detective class for the rogue. This isn't it. In 9th place, we have the Mastermind, which, like the Inquisitive, was from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Boy, that book was not helping the rogue much. This subclass is meant to make you a super villain or a spy. Does it? No, but at least it's better than the Inquisitive. It starts off at 3rd level by giving you some proficiencies. Disguise kit, forgery kit, and a gaming set, along with 2 languages and the ability to mimic an accent. I like this. These are all fun for roleplay, and in the right game, they could be good. But even in the right game, they're not going to come up too often. Unless someone is constantly checking you for your papers, or very concerned that you might be one of them foreigners, you may never use this. Our main feature at 3rd level is Master of Tactics, which allows you to use the help action as a bonus action. And when you're aiding an ally in attacking, you can use the help action at their feet. Now, it's only going to matter taking the help action as a bonus action in combat. Otherwise, it doesn't matter that it's a bonus action. So pretty much that means attacking a creature or possibly helping it if it's trying to get out of a grapple. Now, the funny thing is, the one who most needs the help action is you. Once we get to 5th level, if a fighter misses an attack, well, he just attacks again. The rogue is the one who needs to make sure to land his attack. So, in a party of all rogues, this might be pretty solid. In any other party, you're having to decide, is it worthwhile to help them with their attack versus you using your cunning action? Remember, this uses your bonus action, and as a rogue, rogues have better things to do with their bonus action. What's more, later we'll find a subclass that can also use the help action every round at a distance as a free action. Well, the 3rd level features weren't great, but they weren't terrible. Now we were waiting for 9th level to get terrible with Insightful Manipulator. If you sit with someone for a minute, observing them and interacting with them, then you can learn some trivial information about them, and not very much trivial information. You can find out if they're smarter than you or about the same or less smart, or if they're more charismatic than you. This is nothing. Clearly, in most situations, you won't have the minute to even use this at all. But if you did have some time, isn't this the sort of thing that you're learning just using an insight roll? I mean, the information here is really insignificant. And for God's sake, if someone is more charismatic than you, do you even need a roll for that? Isn't that the whole point of charisma? That it's kinda obvious. At 13th level, you have Misdirection. Give this feature points for reminding everyone that you gain cover when you're standing behind another character. Of course, generally, if this comes into play, it's because you're standing behind your party tank, so I hope he has a sense of humor. The ideal situation is if you're actually behind one of the enemy when another enemy tries to shoot through him. That's not going to come up often because, after all, the enemy archer can move. But for that one time it does, that'll be fun. And finally, at 17th level, we get Soul of Deceit. It means that now your mind can't be read by telepathy. You're also able to project false thoughts. In your game, do you run into a lot of times when your mind is being read by telepathy? Does this come up a lot? Does this come up ever? As a 17th level feature, it's hard to think of something more underwhelming. In 8th place is the Assassin, and I'm going to get in trouble here because there's quite a few people who like this particular subclass. Not many optimizers, but there's a lot of people out there who do. Everyone pretty much is aware of the fact that the middle features are no good. It's all about the 3rd level feature Assassin. And the thing about the Assassin is that for it to be good, it requires that you're not actually using the rules of the game. And in fact, everyone who's ever told me that the Assassin is good has then pointed out incidences where what they're doing is not following how the rules work. And yeah, any subclass can be really good if you change the rules to make it good. So, okay, what do we have? Well, first, bonus proficiencies. You gain bonus proficiency with Disguise Kit and Poisoner's Kit. And like I said, for the last subclass, I like bonus proficiencies. How often Disguise Kit will pop up is really going to depend on your game. As for the Poisoner's Kit, well, poison doesn't do a whole lot, but it doesn't hurt to have it, and in some games, maybe you'll find use for it. But really, we're here for the Assassinate ability. This feature gives you advantage on creatures that haven't taken their turn yet. Okay, that's pretty good. You will often have advantage on other creatures with this. You're going to have to be beating them in initiative then, so you're going to want to invest in that. But as a rogue, you've already got at least a decent initiative. I'd want more than decent if my feature is going to rely on it so. And then I'd like to point out that we have Steady Aim, which gives us advantage on every attack roll we have for the entire combat. And in fact, if we were hidden, we'd have advantage on our attack roll. There's lots of ways to get advantage on attack rolls. So this isn't anything terribly impressive, but sure, I'll take it. It's okay to have. But then, of course, there's the second part of Assassinate, which additionally makes any hit that you score against a surprised creature a critical hit. So you're going to do some great damage whenever you attack a surprised creature. And how often is that going to come up? Pretty much never. Firstly, the DM has to check if any kind of surprise is even partially applicable. In most combats, it won't be. You can see see your opponents, or you opened a door and found them within. Generally, you're noticing each other, no surprise. Which again means, we've got a feature here which is only going to come up a small fraction of time. But okay, it can come up sometimes. And if your DM has a tendency of having you run into people all the time, in the dark, in trees, if the adventure is set up with the idea that you're sneaking into places constantly, perhaps to rob them, then okay, we have situations where surprise is a possibility. So to get surprise, it's then a roll. By rules as written, for surprise to come up, you have to be trying to be stealthy. Okay, so you've announced that you're trying to be stealthy, so then we make a roll. It's your stealth check against their passive perception, and that's each one of them. It isn't a single roll, but a roll for each one of your enemies. By the way, if you do manage to surprise some, but not all, the DM doesn't necessarily have to tell you which ones are surprised and which aren't. But I'm going to be nice here and assume that the DM is, so that you know who you do have surprise against if you got it. But wait, I was way too kindly there. It isn't your stealth roll against theirs, it's the stealth rolls of everyone in your party. You see, surprise isn't a individual thing, it's a group thing. And unless you're playing a solo adventure where you're a lone assassin running about, your stealth is probably not nearly as important as the stealth of all the rest of the members of your party. So, you have a tank in the party, guy in plate mail, clomping along, he's the one that's got to make the stealth check. It's not only you who've got to beat their passive perception, he's got to beat their passive perception. See, surprise doesn't work that they don't know that you're there. Surprise in D&D 5e means they don't know that there's any threat at all. If they think there's any threat, even from somebody else, there's no surprise. So that fantastic stealth that you've got is not going to be doing you much good unless the whole rest of your party all has fantastic stealth. In a party of rogues, okay. In a party with a wizard and a paladin in armor and a cleric in armor, it's not going to work. They hear anybody in your party, no surprise. This puts the number of times that this can even come up now to be very slim. Sure, there might be some time when your die rolls are really lucky and you actually get it, but those times are going to be so few and so far between that having a feature that relies on it is not worth much at all. And we're not done yet. It gets worse. In 5e, there's no surprise round. Rather, someone is just surprised until they take their turn. As soon as their turn comes up, if they were surprised, they don't get to do anything, and then they are no longer surprised. Which means not only do you have to surprise your enemy, but you have to go first in initiative against them too. Sure, your initiative's good, so you're often gonna go before them, but this is another factor, cutting down the number of times this will ever come up. Sure, this might work with some help from the magic user, casting silence or pass without trace, but a feature that relies on the significant resources of other party members isn't much of a feature at all. I like to think of Assassinate as a trap, because it makes you think that you're going to be able to be doing this all the time, and that you're going to get these great kills in, when really you'll be lucky if it happens once or twice. Believe it or not, it's downhill from there. We get infiltration expertise. This non-existent 9th level feature allows you to create false identities. And isn't this something that you should be able to do without this feature? Because you should be able to do all of this with skills. You have the disguise kit that allows you to disguise yourself as somebody else. Disguise kit and deception, you should just be able to do this with those skills. 13th level gives us imposter, which is similar to the 3rd level mastermind feature, but that one gave significantly more and had the good graces to not be the only feature at the level. And finally, at 17th, we have Death Strike, which allows you to do extra damage to a surprised creature. But in this case, not only do you have to surprise it, but then it also gets an out because it gets a Constitution saving throw. So a feature which is hardly ever going to come up, and when it does, it might not work. Okay, so far these subclasses are not exciting me. Will the next one? Well, that's number 7, and it's the Scout. You know, I really like the idea of a non-magical ranger. That's certainly how I would design the game, and while I think it would have worked out better to build a whole class that way, trying to make a rogue into that class, that's got some possibilities. How well does it work out? Not great. We start with Skirmisher. This allows you to move up to half your speed as a reaction when an enemy ends its turn within 5 feet of you. Your movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. You'll note that this is after the enemy has ended its turn there, which means that this is after the enemy probably attacked you. This would have been way better if it had been before the enemy hit you, but hey, I suppose it's better to move away than to be hanging out next to the person who's beating you up, assuming you're still alive. Of course, moving away is already covered with cunning action on your next turn, but this lets you save your cunning action, so this has some utility. But this is 3rd level, and at 5th level you get Uncanny Dodge, which also requires your reaction, letting you reduce the damage, meaning now Skirmisher is only useful when an enemy moved up to you but didn't hit, meaning I'm being generous with the green rating. But for 2 levels, levels 3 and 4, it will very occasionally be useful, maybe. You also get Survivalist, which gives you proficiency in 2 skills and expertise in them. You're a skill monkey with features that make proficient skills even better, so you're the best person in the party to be getting more skills, and expertise is a significant bonus. So this is really good. Except, the skills in question are nature and survival. It's nice that these are skills that you can't normally get, but nature and survival are both skills where it doesn't really help much if more than one person has them in the party. So if any other of the characters in your party already have either one of these, this is kind of redundant. If they don't, yeah, this is good. Then at 9th level, you get superior mobility, which increases your walking speed by 10, and you can apply that to climbing and swimming if you already have climbing and swimming speed, which you probably don't. A little extra speed is okay, but wouldn't it have been better if this was actually giving you a swimming speed and a climbing speed? By the way, the Ranger gets both of those at 6th level, but you can get those from a race, so if you want to use this feature fully, looks like it's time to think about a Merfolk Scout. At 13th, you get Ambush Master, which has 2 parts. First, you get advantage on initiative roll. I like that. Additionally, if you hit a creature in that first round combat, the rest of your party has advantage on hitting that creature in this first round. That's okay. How many in your party will this help? Controller Wizard? No. Controller Bard? No. Anybody which is casting spells they have saves on? Nope. And chances are you're a ranged rogue, so that first round of combat, it's not at all unlikely that the other martial characters in your party might not have been able to get up to that person. So yeah, this will pop up. It's okay. And that ends it all at 70th level with Sudden Strike, which lets you make an additional attack as a bonus action when you make a regular attack, which is basically just a slightly improved 2-weapon fighting if you're a melee rogue, but if you're a ranged one, that's nice. But the big deal is that you get to apply your sneak attack damage a second time this turn on that second attack. Well, that's pretty good, but you can't use your sneak attack against the same target that you already used this turn, so that's not so good. So in order to use this feature, you need to find 2 eligible targets within range. It also means if you're fighting your one big bad at the end, the one where you really want your extra abilities to count on, this isn't going to help. But yeah, this is pretty good. Coming in at 6th place is the Thief from the Player's Handbook. Here's your basic guy who's gonna be good at stealing stuff. Is he? Let's take a look. We start off right away with Fast Hands, which, like the Assassin, is one of those features that requires a lot of looking at the rules. This is giving you a bonus action that now allows you to also make sleight of hand checks, use your Thieves' tools, or take the use an object action. Okay, well, do you often need a bonus action instead of a normal action to use sleight of hand? Clearly, if you're not in combat, this makes no difference. And in combat, remember, you can't steal someone's weapon out of their hand with sleight of hand. And I suppose sometime, maybe once, maybe in a campaign, you might find a time when you actually have to disarm a trap in the middle of combat. But otherwise, for 99% of the time when you're disarming traps, you won't care if it's a bonus act, which makes the main use of this the ability to use the use an object action. And here's where we actually have to look up the rules again on things, because people really forget this. And I have seen numerous videos online where people are saying how great this is and then telling you how it works incorrectly. The important thing to remember here is that the use an object action is not equivalent to the activate a magical item action. You can't use magical items with this. Can't activate a staff. You cannot drink potions, so no healing. So what can you do with it? Not much. You can draw a weapon with it. The normal uses I can think of it which would actually be useful is that you can drop ball bearings or caltrops with it. So if you're a rogue and you're being chased, you can do your normal attack and then use a bonus action to drop some ball bearings. Okay, that's not horrible. Of course, unless you're being chased a lot and you're very concerned about making the territory behind you difficult terrain, it's not going to be a big deal, but it could happen. There's also one weird one where the rules are poorly written, and that's with Alchemist Fire, Acid, Holy Water, or Oil. It's very clear that you can actually drop any of these as your use an item action, so you're going to be able to do it as bonus action. So that's something. But the descriptions of these items often imply that you can use an action to attack someone with it, but the descriptions don't say use the attack action. So rules as written, you can actually throw acid in somebody's face with this, as that doesn't count as an attack. Personally, I prefer to take this that you can drop those things as part of using an action, but actually tossing them at someone is an attack and should fall under after the attack action. But considering how skimpy this feature already is, sure, I'd allow it. Also at 3rd level, you get second story work, which gives you a climbing speed. Hey, I bet Scout would have liked that. And lets you jump a little bit further, though any fighter is going to be able to jump further than you are. Most of the time when you're climbing, it doesn't matter how fast you climb, especially when the rest of the party can't climb any faster, and the distance isn't enough to make a lot of difference, but sure. Then at 9th level, we get Supreme Sneak. This gives you advantage on stealth checks if you move no more than half your speed. A boost to your stealth checks. Nice. Stealth's a skill you're likely to use. Of course, if you gave it expertise, which you probably did, this isn't going to be needed most times. But the few times it is, it's nice. But this is 9th level. And at 11th, you're getting Reliable Talent, where your stealth rolls will be a minimum of 19, and if you gave it expertise, a minimum of 23, meaning this is almost never going to be needed. And that's all you're getting for 9. At 13th, you get Use Magic Device, and hey, what's this? A good feature? You get to use any magical item. Doesn't matter what class or race it was meant for. This is good. You can get up to all kinds of shenanigans with this. Now, let's temper this down a bit. The best magical items do require attunement, and this does not increase the number of attunement slots you have. Plus, while it's good for you to be able to read scrolls that others can't, there's a good possibility that someone in your party can read those. So this feature is definitely going to be better in a party which doesn't have a lot of casters in it. But overall, this is a really good feature. But it's coming at 13. Think how much better this would have been if it had come in at 3rd level. And they could have left in the level requirement for the use of magical items, and then you could use magic items this whole time. You could have built a character around that. But this is the best feature that any rogue subclass come up with so far. I'm happy. And then at 17th, get Thieves Reflexes, which allows you to take 2 turns during the first round of any combat. No requirements, no checks, you just get a second turn. That's great. 2 turns for a rogue. Since they're separate turns, that means you can do sneak attack on both. This is a really significant feature, making the back half of the thief really good. Unfortunately, the front end isn't that good. Boy, having to sit through those first 12 levels before you get to something, not worth it. If you've got a game that's starting play at 12th, 13th, 14th level, then yeah, taking a thief is worthwhile. I'd also be thinking about Tasha's optional rules about changing subclasses. Play a different subclass until 13th level and then switch over to thief. Yeah, that can work. Of course, we haven't had a subclass yet where the first 12 levels are any good, but hey, we've got more subclasses coming up. Let's see if any of them offer a good begin. That leads us to number 5, the Phantom. Here's our occultist type rogue that deals with death. Gotta say, overall, the features are a little awkward, but there's some playable stuff here. Starting with Whispers of the Dead. After a rest, you can simply choose to gain 1 skill or tool proficiency, and you get to keep it until you choose another. And this is exactly the kind of feature I was looking for with regard to skills. Reliable talent will work on whatever skills you bring in with this. I mentioned in my previous video how I really like to get the intelligence-based skills onto a rogue, but some of them aren't offered. But with this, they are. You want Arcana? You've got Arcana. But this is better than that, because you can switch it all the time. Whatever skill is necessary, you can grab. Wails for the Grave. This allows you to do some extra damage to a second target, half your sneak attack damage. You get to use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. Yeah, I wanted help doing more damage, but this isn't much more damage. At 3rd level, when we get this, our sneak attack damage is 2d6, and our proficiency bonus is 2. That means, on average, we're going to be doing 3 points of extra damage twice a day. That's not much damage. And worse, I mentioned it in my sorcerer video, when you get extra damage, you really want it on the same person that you're attacking, because that's the person you want to damage. This is damaging somebody else for not much damage, not often. Now it scales, so at 10th level, that's going to be 9 points of damage 4 times a day. That's still not very much. I'll take it as more is better than less, and it's not like other subclasses have been giving me anything better. Then at 9th, we get Tokens of the Departed, which is basically a new resource. You get 1 token whenever anyone dies. You don't have to be the killer here, you just have to be around when they die. You do need to have 1 hand free, so no 2-weapon fighting, but you're going to be a ranged rogue anyway, so that's alright. Now you have 3 things you can do with these trinkets. Firstly, just having one on you gives you advantage on Constitution saving throws and also death save throws. That's really good. Getting advantage on con saves, you've just become noticeably more hardy. You're going to always want to have one of the trinkets for this. Secondly, this allows you to use your Wails from the Grave feature more often. Every time you destroy one of your soul trinkets, you get to use Wails from the Grave again. So the problem with Wails from the Grave wasn't the low amount of damage it actually does. It wasn't good, but that wasn't the main problem. But how seldom you get to do it. But with this, you're getting to do it all the time. I mean, you're part of a D&D party. People are going to be dying around you all the time. The third use of this is that it allows you to destroy a token in order to speak with the recently deceased spirit. However, they get to lie to you, so chances are this is only useful if it's one of your friends who died. And by 9th level, you're kind of hoping that if it's your friends or allies who died, instead you're doing something to bring them back. But it's thematic, and with the other 2 uses of this is a good feature, and I really wish they hadn't designed it this way. It would have been far better to have tokens of the departed come in at 3rd level with Whales from the Grave, so that from the start, the amount of times that you use Whales from the Grave would be dependent on your soul tokens. In fact, get rid of the proficiency bonus times altogether. Just make it about soul tokens. That'd make it more fun, too. You're gathering the tokens up. It gives you something to be doing. And then add additional uses for the trinkets here at 9. But it's designed this way, which means the subclass wasn't very good for a while, but it's gotten much better here at 9. How will 13th do? Will 13th keep us going in the right direction? As a matter of fact, it will. With Ghost Walk, you get to take on a spectral form, which has all sorts of different features. Gives you a flying speed, a very slow flying speed, 10 feet, but a flying speed is a flying speed. With hover, and attack rolls against you have disadvantage. You also get to move through creatures or objects, and you get to stay this way for 10 minutes. So for 10 minutes, you can pass through walls, you can pass through doors. Anybody you're fighting is going to have a much harder time hitting you, and you can fly. Now you only get 1 free use of this ability, but you can destroy a trinket to get more uses of it, which means you're going to be using this all the time, because again, dungeon party, lots of dead people. So yeah, this is solid. Then at 17th, you get Death's Friend. Now when you use Whales from the Grave, you get to do the extra damage not only to that secondary creature, but to the first creature you attacked as well. That increases the amount of damage you're going to be doing significantly. Also, you get a free soul trinket at the end of a long rest. You're going to be getting enough soul trinkets all the time, but a free one's nice. It means you didn't have to worry about using up that last one at the big battle at the end of the day, so that you can start off with one in your hand, keeping your con saves with advantage. So yeah, we've definitely stepped up in the world with the Phantom, but it takes a while. I really wouldn't want to start playing this as written at 3rd level. Someone tells you you're going to start a game at 9th or 10th level, yeah, jump on this. If only there would be a rogue subclass which was good at the early levels. Well, completely off topic, let's go to number 4, the Swashbuckler. Now, the Swashbuckler is going to be a subclass that's going to want me to have a high charisma. And for all of you who've looked at my other video, you know that I like my rogues to have a high intelligence, and you really can't afford to do both. So if this one wants me to have a high charisma, I want it to be giving me a lot for that. Additionally, it means that I want to play this character if I know what my party is going to be constructed like. So if it doesn't have a bard or a sorcerer or warlock, that is that it makes sense for me to invest in charisma to become the face of the party. This subclass also really wants me to be a melee rogue, and in general, ranged rogue is better, or at least ranged rogue is safer. So better be doing something nice for my defense. Let's take a look. I start with fancy footwork. So when I attack a creature, it then can't make opportunity attacks against. You will notice the important when I attack, not when I hit, just when I attack. Alright, this is giving me something similar to what I already have with my cunning action, which should make this a lesser feature, but it works in practice really well. Having this feature makes it really easy for the rogue to slip into combat, make its attack, and then slip right out again. Since it isn't using up its bonus action to disengage, two-weapon fighting becomes very practical, giving you little extra damage, more importantly, another chance to do your sneak attack. Or, if needed, you still have access to your cunning action, so maybe you can dash. If you're gonna be a melee rogue, you want something like this that lets you get in and out, and this really works. I've seen it work. And we get a second ability here at 3rd level, which is Rakish Audacity. And this is a 2-part feature. First, it gives you a bonus to your initiative rolls equal to your charisma modifier. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I like having bonuses to my initiative rolls. Now it's your charisma modifier, so again, I've got to be putting points in charisma for this to make much sense. But okay, if I'm taking the Swashbuckler, I've already accepted that. Second part of Rakish Audacity is that it gains you a new way to sneak attack. Now, all you have to be is dueling someone. If you don't have anyone else within 5 feet of you, it's a duel, that gives you sneak attack. And yeah, this is great. Remember long ago when the Inquisitive gave you an extra way to gain sneak attack? Remember how that cost you a bonus action? This doesn't. Remember how that might work or might not? This doesn't. As long as you're alone, you get it. This just makes it really easy for you to get sneak attack. So dare I say it, this is a good 3rd level for a rogue subclass. This is playable. I'm downright happy and confused. Will it keep going? Let's see. With Panache. You get to use your charms here. So you get to make a persuasion check against their insight. Okay, what do you get? If you succeed when the creature is hostile, then it has disadvantage on attack rolls against everyone except you. What the hell? This is insane. This is a tank ability. In fact, very similar abilities are in subclasses for the paladin and the fighter. And do you know what you're not? A paladin or a fighter. They have loads of hit dice and armor. If you're doing anything like this, then this subclass should have given you all kinds of armor and hits, and it did not. You don't want to do this. In fact, this is going against what the subclass had done before. The whole idea of your third level of features was that you could zip in and zip out, not confronting your enemy. You're there, then you're gone. But this is, you're calling them to you. Okay, so it's a taunting ability. So you've worked out some way that you're going to do this and then run away. That doesn't even work, because if you run too far, it stops working. So you've got to stay reasonably close to them, close enough that they might get you. And there are no times when you want to be standing around next to your enemy. You are not hardy enough for that. Look, throughout an entire campaign, you might find one time where you've cleverly worked out all sorts of little things with terrain, how far exactly you can move, how far exactly they can move, possibly adding in that you're going to be dodging and all the rest. That once, maybe, you can make this work out in your favor. But all the rest of the time, this is either something that you won't do, or if you do, it's really going to hurt you. This is a terrible feature for you to be getting. I can understand what they were doing stylistically. They're trying to get the whole flavor of the quick-talking swashbuckler in, taunts his opponents. Yeah, but it doesn't work. This is a poor feature. Red all over it. But okay, there's a second part. Okay, that's what happens if you succeed with a hostile creature. If it's not hostile to you, it's charmed by you for 1 minute. All right, a free charm, that's pretty good. So for out of combat, panache is actually decent. It's quite good to be able to charm someone, and since this isn't a magical effect, this is just based on you being charismatic, they're not going to be upset with you afterwards. So yeah, this is occasionally useful. I would be even more positive about it, except this is 9th level, and by now the bards have been charming people all over the place for a long time. So coming a bit late. So if I combine the pretty good, if late, free charming effect, and the horrible taunting, pretending you're a tank effect, panache comes out as okay. Okay, then at 13th level, we have elegant maneuver. Here you can use a bonus action. I hate things that want me to use a bonus action to gain advantage on my next acrobatics or athletics check that I make in this turn. Really? That's all it's given me. At 13th level, I can use up my bonus action to get advantage on acrobatics or athletics. Okay, you should never be using athletics at all. And acrobatics, not that often, but you know, an advantage on it's okay. But this is 13th level. This is post-reliable talent. That means that your bare minimum on your acrobatics checks right now is a 20. And if you actually thought acrobatics was important to you, which you might with a swashbuckler, then you put expertise in it, which means at this point, your bare minimum roll with acrobatics is a 25. And this feature is giving you advantage on that. Whoopee. Okay, finally at 17th, you get a redo ability. If you miss with an attack, you get to roll again with advantage. And you get to do this once between short rests. That's quite nice. That's really good. It's also 17th level. And the last really good thing we got was a 3rd. Frankly, once I get my 3rd level ability, the rest isn't worth it. If I'm taking this subclass, I'm doing something else. Now, of course, considering the previous subclasses we just looked at, the obvious move is that you start with this one, and then you switch over into one of those. And that is viable. Much better to have this as your 3rd level, and then go to the 9th level Phantom. Yeah, that's playable. Although, remember, when you switch subclasses, you give up the abilities that you have here. So really, if I'm taking this subclass, it's got those really nice 3rd level abilities, and I'm having to raise my charisma, I'm multi-classing. That's what you do with this. You multi-class. There's several really good options that this will fit with, but it's me. Yeah, I'm going Warlock. While our subclasses are getting better, we still don't have one which is good all the way through, but at least we have some that are partially good now. The Rogue really needed some help, and I've got to say, so far, not really getting it. And we're all the way up to 3rd place. But okay, what's in 3rd? Well, in 3rd place, we have Wild Card. I bet you weren't expecting that one. Should have noticed something was strange when you noticed we started with 10 rogue subclasses instead of 9. But hey, Wild Card was a real legitimate subclass. Written for the Legends of Runeterra, I can never pronounce that right. It's the Dark Tides of Bilgewater supplement. For all of you who remember those faraway times, we briefly had the Dark Tides of Bilgewater popping up as a normal part of D&D. The 3 subclasses that it came up with, the others being for barbarians and fighters, were up there on D&D Beyond. And then there was a rights problem. So all these disappeared. But hey, they were there, and Wildcard is pretty good. It's also pretty odd. Looking at the structure of it, you can see that somebody else was involved. I definitely would have liked to have neatened it up a little bit. And if you're going to use it, I suggest that you neaten it up. But okay, let's see what we got. We start with Tricks Up the Sleeve. This gives you the Guidance Cantrip. Guidance Cantrip is one of the best cantrips in the game, but I really like Guidance on a rogue because, again, the rogue's a skill monkey. He can be helping his own skills all the time with this. Yes, you can help other people still, but Guidance on a rogue, to me, is about just making the rogue better. This also has an addition that at 9th level, you get to use Guidance at 30 feet, and you can cast it as a bonus action. It's not going to come up much. The only time I see that being a thing is, again, if somebody else is grappled. Wildcard's Gambit. This one's going to take a little bit of discussion. Okay, you choose a proficiency in a gaming set, and you get a special ability that goes with whichever type you choose. Loaded Dice is the best. It gives you a shield type ability that you can use a number of times equal to how many sneak attack damage dice you have. This is a fantastic defensive ability, except it uses your reaction, and in 2 levels, you're going to have Uncanny Dodge, which you're going to use pretty much in the exact same situations. As for the other 2, Dragon Chest gives you 3 different chess maneuvers that you can carry out, each having a different effect that you can use on a bonus action. One deals extra damage, one gives you a bit more movement, and one gives you advantage on dexterity saving throws, which it's unlikely you're going to know that you're going to need beforehand. They vary from pretty good to situational, but you can only use them the number of times equal to your charisma modifier. This means 2 or 3 times a day. If you're lucky, 4 eventually. Not enough to make these worthwhile. The third option is playing cards, which allows you to use a card as a weapon that you attack with, and the effect is random, either doing more damage or slowing your opponent or healing you. The fourth choice does allow you to choose which one, so you have a 50% chance of getting what you want, but you also have a chance that using this will be worse than just using your normal attack. And again, it's based on your charisma modifier, so it's really not going to give you much. Those few number of times really just kill these 2 abilities, and also kind of annoys me in that structurally it's off. Since Loaded Dice is based on the number of die that you already have, these 2 should be based on your sneak attack die. If they were, they'd be pretty good. And then at 9th level, we have Shifting the Odds, which gives me a bonus action 120-foot teleport. Well, hello there. This is nice. Teleports are always good. Additionally, when I do teleport, every creature around me within 10 feet has to make a saving throw or take 4d10 force damage, and if they succeed, they take half as much. It's also an area attack. I become a rogue that can deal with mob. Alright, this is really good for a melee rogue, but you're probably not going to be a melee rogue if you're taking this subclass, but even if it isn't a melee rogue, this is good. So I'm thrilled with this, getting this once a day, and you regain it after you finish a short or long rest. So I get bonus action teleport once every short rest that also does damage. Yeah, I'll take it. This is good. Well, things are definitely looking up. Can we keep it going with our 13th level feature of Twist of Fate? Oh, yes we can, because after rolling initiative, this lets me swap places with anyone else in the initiative order. Now, if it's one of my friends, they have to agree to it, but if it's one of my enemies, they're just stuck with it. Oh, I like this. Now, to be fair, how good this is going to depend on if your DM tells you the initiative order right away, because otherwise you don't know who to swap with. But this means that if you want, you will never go after your opponents. You can swap with their highest person in initiative every time. That's fantastic. Now, dulling it down a little bit, remember, you're a rogue, high dex, your initiative was already good, so you're often going to be beating them with initiative, so this isn't nearly as good as it would be for somebody to low dex, but it's still pretty decent. What's more, you can swap with anybody, so if you do win initiative in the battle, so you can swap with your bard or wizard so they can cast Hypnotic Pattern before anybody else gets an action. Okay, that's solid. Does it have anything else for me? Yes, it does. 17th level's Joker Wild, which thematically I find really odd, but okay. Ignoring the theme, this is one of those transformational features. First, it recharges your uses of the Wildcard's Gambit feature. Then it doubles your movement speed. It gives you resistance to all damage, immunity to a bunch of conditions, allows you to move through objects and creatures, and here shifting from the way it's done in all other subclasses and spells, and if you end your turn within a creature, it takes the damage, not you. So this is just generally good, but boy, for a melee rogue, again, this is great. You get to use this once a day. That'll do. This feels like an Unearthed Arcana subclass, but this was published. I can't blame a DM who wants to use this for rewriting it a bit, but overall, this is a good subclass giving the rogue some nice features. Rogue needs them. Which takes us to number 2, the Soul Knife. And boy, was there a whole lot of hate pointed at the Soul Knife before it even came out, and even more after. I don't recall any subclass getting this much hate, and it had nothing to do with what the subclass was. Rather, the problem was that people didn't want this subclass, they wanted a different Soul Knife. In previous games, the Soul Knife had been a melee assassin. Someone would pop in and use his magical blade to kill someone and disappear. And that's not what this is. While this Soul Knife can indeed fight in melee, he's not built for that. He's mainly meant to be a ranged rook, and for that, he does very well. It's also that the old Soul Knife was part of psionics, a concept that came in very big in science fiction in the 40s and was part of D&D for years. They've looked at multiple ways to bring it into 5e, but it's never really fit in terribly well, so they kind of smoothed it out, just making it a slightly different version of magic, and have stuck it in now in a couple classes. This one in the subclass fighter. So if you're upset by any of those things, just give this subclass a different name. Think of it as the energy killer, and let's evaluate it for what it is, and for what it gives you. And what does it give you? Well, it starts by giving you psionic power. This is a new resource. A group of d6s equal to twice your proficiency bonus, plus 1 after each short rest. They scale not only by proficiency bonus, but also by size of die. D8 at 5th, D10 at 11th, and D12 at 17th. Okay, so possibly a reasonable amount of resource depending on what it's for. What do you use these for? Well, we start off with having 2 functions for them. The first is psi-bolstered knack, and that's when you fail a skill or tool check that you have proficiency with, then you can roll one of your psionic energy die and add that number to the check, and damn if that isn't good. A D6 is often going to turn your failures into a success. A D8 even more often. And you have a lot of these die. And what makes it even better is that you only expend the die if you succeed. You might say, but aren't you complaining about having these things that bolstered skills? Because once we get to level 11, reliable talent makes them all trivial. Yes, but we're not done. This is a well-developed subclass, and things will happen as we go up in level. But for now, we've got that, and we've got another ability, which is Psychic Whispers. This is telepathy. You get to choose a number of creatures up to your proficiency bonus that you can be telepathic with for an amount of time equal to a number rolled on your psionic energy die. So it could be an hour, could be 6 hours. In either case, it's a while. And the range on this is up to a mile. That's all great. On top of it, the creatures don't all have to speak a common language. Forget about learning languages. You don't need them anymore. As long as the creature can speak a language, you can now talk to them. Okay, that makes this really good. And what's more, you get this once per day for free. You want to do it more times, then you just spend a psionic energy die. Well, that's a pretty good 3rd level. And we're nowhere near done, because we also get Psychic Blades. This is when you can just create blades in your hand and throw them, or just stab with them if you really want to be melee. You've got a range of 60 feet. If you use one in one hand, then as a bonus action, you can use one in the other. You have to keep your hands free, but I don't see that being a big problem, since the whole point of what you do with your hands as a rogue is usually to stab people. It is nice that you can use these in melee. You might find a time for that, but really this is all about throwing. And you're gonna be the best blade thrower in the business. This gives you 2 opportunities for your sneak attack every round. Plus, apparently you have no weapons on you, so if they were going to pat you down before seeing the mob boss, no problem. You'll appear to be unarmed until you're not. Alright, that's all good stuff. For my money, that's the best we've gotten yet at 3rd level, giving you a good plus to your damage dealing and your ability to cause damage, plus a nice boost to your skills. Can it keep it up? Well, at 9th level, we get Soul Blades. This gives us 2 more uses for our psionic energy. The first is Honing Strike. This is any time you make an attack with your Psychic Blades and you miss, you can roll your psionic energy die and add the number. At this point, you have 8 die plus 1 or 2, maybe 3 for short rest. You only expend the die if you're successful. That's a lot of misses that are now going to be hits. That's a lot more damage that you're doing. A lot more opportunities for your sneak attack. This is an utterly fantastic feature. If you miss, use your die. But there's more. You also get Psychic Teleportation, which gives you a teleport. As a bonus bonus action, you can roll a die, and whatever the number is on it, you get to teleport 10 times that number. At this point, that's between 10 and 80 feet. All right, the uncertainty of it makes it a little bit less good than it could be, but that's only because it could be really good. If you need them, you have a lot of teleports. In fact, the only reason you wouldn't have tons of teleports is because you're using up your dice on your homing strikes. But when you need it, it's there. And more often than not, 10 feet will actually get you out of any problem that you're in. Then at 13th level, we get Psychic Veil, which is invisibility for an hour. Damn, what rogue doesn't want invisibility? Comes on a little later than magic classes normally grab them, but invisibility is always welcome, and really always welcome on a rogue. And once again, you get one use of this for free, and if you want more uses of it, expend your psionic energy die. Then finally at 17th level, you get Rend Mind. This is when you do your sneak attack damage with a psychic blade, you can force the creature to make a wisdom save, and if it fails, it's stunned for 1 minute. It gets repeat saves on the end of each of its turns, but if you've targeted something with a low wisdom, that's nice. What you've got here is something very similar to Hold Monster, and Hold Monster is a really good spell when you can land it. My problem with Hold Person and Hold Monster is it's a save or suck. If a wizard casts it and it doesn't work, he's wasted his whole turn, not to mention his spell slot. Nothing's happened and he's used up his action. But when you do this, you're not using your action. You just get to tack this on to your sneak attack damage. That means even if it doesn't work, you haven't lost anything. And when it does work, stun target is fun to play. This is a resourceless feature. You just get to do it. And features that don't cost you anything are always better than ones that do. On the other hand, do you want to use it again? Well, then you can expend 3 psionic energy dice and use it again. Considering all those uses of that dice, you may not want to do this too often, but you can. All right, all of this has been just fantastic. So let's take a look at the downside of the Soul Knife. And there's 2 things. One minor, because he doesn't end up with weapons in his hands very often, the Soul Knife subclass doesn't work very well with multiple of the feats built around martial class. Not a big deal, but something to keep in mind. More of a big deal is that everything here is built around you using your psychic blades, which means you're not using a magical weapon. Now, the best magical weapons require attunement slots, and you're not going to have any problem finding 3 magical items to fill your attunement slots. But yes, that you're not going to be using magical weapons is an issue. How big of an issue? Well, if it wasn't, the Soul Knife would be in first place. So what's number 1? Well, it's the Arcane Trickster, of course. As I stated in my previous video, the 5e rogue can't compete in scouting and stealth activities with casters. Well, if you can't beat them, join them. Spells bring the Arcane Trickster versatility that no other rogue can match. And its 13 spells, plus 4 cantrips, are like getting 17 additional features. In many cases, just one of its spells is better than the entire features that other rogues get. The key to the Arcane Trickster's success is that it is a rogue first, not a caster, so its spells should be used to buff the rogue. The Arcane Trickster gets spellcasting at 3rd level, gaining spells at 1/3 the rate of pure casters, topping out at 4th level spells. All but 4 of the spells must be from the illusion or enchantment list. Now I've put the Arcane Trickster on top, but only with the right spell choices. Some should depend on the campaign, but there are a few you should take always. If you are a melee rogue, take Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade, or both, and Shadow Blade, which will increase your damage output. Any rogue should take Mirror Image for defense, and Haste will allow you to deliver Sneak Attack twice in a round. Yep, that works within the rules if you use an action to ready an attack. For sneaking, invisibility, and greater invisibility are your go-tos, but above everything else is Find Familiar. A familiar can carry out the help action every turn, thus giving you advantage and crushing the 3rd level features of the Inquisitive and Mastermind. And it can scout ahead far better than the Scout. The Arcane Trickster is on top because of this feature. It doesn't need any other features to claim the crown, but it still gets others. So, Mage Hand Legerdemain. One of your cantrips is Mage Hand, a very useful cantrip, and you get a souped-up version that you control with a bonus action that can be invisible, can stow and retrieve objects, and disarm traps at range. The Thieves' Fast Hand feature is looking pretty sad now. So you're now the lock and trap person without ever having to fear being harmed by a trap. Cool. At 9th level, there's Magical Ambush, forcing targets to save with disadvantage against the rogue's spells if he's hidden. Up to this point, picking up any spells that affect enemies has been questionable. The rogue's casting attribute is always always going to be lower than a full caster's, so the chances of spells sticking has been less than it should be. That changes here. The Arcane Trickster is still not a main controller, and God, never a blaster, but it can be a backup controller or debuffer now. Just pick up a few spells. Tasha's Hideous Laughter is a good choice until you can grab Hypnotic Pattern or Fear. Affecting enemies with spells should never be a rogue's primary move. That would be sneak attack, but this adds another weapon to his arsenal. Versatile Trickster lets you use your mage hand as an inferior familiar, one that eats up your bonus actions. If your familiar just died or you want to give help both to yourself and another member of the party, then you'll use this. And finally, at 17th level, we have Spell Thief, which is kind of a strange one. After a caster casts a spell, you can use Spell Thief to try and counter that spell. Remember, if your enemy is equivalent level of you, he's probably going to be better than you, but you've got a chance, so it's worth doing. Just countering their spell is good. Additionally, if this is a non-cantrip spell, which is also of a level that you can cast, you can steal it from them, then you can cast it yourself using one of your spell slots over the next 8 hours. And boy, is that kind of situational. First off, you only get up to 4th level spells, and that's at the end of your career. So generally, we're only talking about 1st, 2nd, and 3rd level spells. Okay, so now you have the ability to cast this spell. That doesn't give you more spell slots. Is this spell that you've stolen better than your own spells? Probably not. The spell stealing part of this feature is kind of cute, but not terribly practical, and you probably won't care about it much. The important part of it is the counterspelling ability. And counterspelling is very good to have. So sure, this is nice, but there's some chance you might have just taken Counterspell as one of your spells if you found that you run into a lot of casters and you want to be able to Counterspell. If so, or if not, one free Counterspell a day is okay. The thing to remember with the 9th, 13th, and 17th level features are those aren't actually your features. Those are just some of them. Your real features are the additional spells that you're getting. For the Arcane Trickster, it's all about the magic. And that's the rogue subclasses. And they are overall not really as good as I'd like. The rogue is a class that really needed its subclasses. This isn't like the wizard or bard that can get by just as they are. The rogue needed a little bit of a boost. And it's really kind of shocking how few of these actually do that. The rogue has some of the worst subclasses in the game, and more than half of these, they're not worth your time. Then you have a few others that you only want to play at high level, and one that you really are going to play if you're going to multi-class or change out later. Depending on if you're using the Bilgewater subclass, we end up with a case where there's only really 2 rogue subclasses, which are just across the board good. I'm hopeful in the future for another subclass or 2 for the rogue which work. Luckily, there is the Soul Knife and Arcane Trickster, and those 2 are golden. So want to play a rogue? There's where you go. So I'm out of rogues and I'm out of absence, so that means it's time to stop.